republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Want to take roll call, please?
Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Stump?
Present.
President Ratterman?
Here?
Director Dean?
Here.
And Director Dooley?
Here.
Thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda, public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Any public comment today? Seeing none, move on to item 3, consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. Any action from the board?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. 5-0. Item 4, old business, discussion action regarding approval. Let me go back. Let me read the consent agenda item into record. 3A, approval of minutes for the board meeting of February 12th and February 26th, 2014. 3B, ratify claim summary number 504, Secretarial Fund, in the amount of $1,252,522.10 for February 14th, or February 2014. And item 3C, approving authorized signers on the Wells Fargo investment custodian account transactions.
And 3D.
And 3D is approval of authorized signatures for LAIF investment transactions. Okay.
So what's your, are you asking us to revote?
No, just reading into record. Item 3 is done. Going to item 4, old business. Discussion, action regarding approval of financial agreements for CCWD $6.4 million water and wastewater capital loan improvement program. Jeffrey Meyer, Director of Administrative Services.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board.
Good morning.
I'd like to take you back briefly to the February 12th meeting that your board approved Resolution 2014-6, which was to authorize us to pursue a long-term financing for water and sewer, the 2 loans we were talking about. This goes back to the rate increase that your board adopted, that the monies that we are collecting, the new monies, are to go to our capital repair and renovation fund and only fund those improvements. Since it takes a while to ramp up the collections from those rates, we were looking at providing some money up front to jumpstart the programs, as we have a number of projects that are underway. And so we looked at securing debt for both the water and the sewer fund. When we look at debt, we have a number of options. We can issue long-term debt, which is bonds, to go to a public offering, sort of like we did with the Flying Acres Assessment District. We can also look at private placement loans with banks, and that banks will look at anything 20 years and under. And what we're seeing now is that the private placement with banks are much more competitive than the long-term financing with a public offering with bonds. In fact, it's sort of the tipping of the scales in the short term is going to private placement. When we did our refinancing of our 2004 revenue bond last year, we went with private placement. We originally were approached by some of the banks to look at it on a one-on-one basis with CCWD. In fact, BBVA approached us and they were talking about maybe 3.25. We stepped back and said, let's go ahead and bring in some experts in the field. Obviously, Cameron Wiest, who's our bond counsel, was one of them. The other was Todd Smith of Southwest Securities. Between Todd's expertise and connections in the financial world, and especially with banks, along with Cameron's expertise, we got 1.58%, nearly half of what was originally proposed to us. So we more than recouped the money that we spent on these two consultants. And we did it again today with this issuance. The process we had was initially for you to authorize us to go out and solicit bids. Southwest Securities, who we contracted out, sent out those bids on February 19th to look at both at a 5-year and a 7-year program, get quotes on those. Those bids came back in. We had 5 good bids, and we wanted to look at those bids and review them. Now, as I get into the review process, there's a couple terms that we use for key factors. A bank will give you an interest rate, but since we are also financing the cost of issuance, you have to look at that as an all-inclusive interest rate. That's what we're looking at when we, one of the factors when we compare these loan packages. And you'll see it's called AIC, all-inclusive costs. As you can see on the screens, these key factors we talked about: all-inclusive costs, total interest costs, rate lock or indexing, because certain banks will only hold these rates for a small window, because obviously the market changes daily and weekly. The other thing we're looking at is prepayment options. If a bank will allow us to prepay the loan, what are the costs associated with that? Some banks will not allow you to prepay. So those are some of the key factors that we looked at in reviewing these 5 competitive bids. After assessing the 5 individual bids, and we'll come to a slide that will show you the actual summary proposals, Umpqua Bank submitted the most competitive bid. So it's going to be our proposal that we move forward with Umpqua, but I want to throw that out there at this particular point, but I want to step back a second and also take a look at the 5- and 7-year options. I know your board was interested in taking a look at both of those. Generally, in the world of finance, there's a pretty significant gap between the 5-year rates and the 7-year rates. What we found here, especially with the Umpqua bid, the gap was minimal and nominal. In fact, it really surprised us. So it merely makes the 7-year rates very, very attractive for us. And when you look at the additional cost of issuance in that, the AIC, very, very minor. And so one of our recommendations here is that we will go on and propose to go a 7-year deal. Now, I know there's questions, why don't you do 5-year, get it over with? Well, we looked at what the annual debt service will be for each of those 5 and 7 years, looked at our revenues, and looked at some of the characteristics of the loan. As you can see in the bottom, I'm sorry, can you go back one slide, please, Mitch? There we go. There's your average debt service, annual debt service, and your maximum debt service. In both of these loan packages, proposals, 5 and 7 year, generally the front end is a little low on the payments and the back end escalates. When we're talking about the 5-year loan, the last 2 years, years 4 and 5, we're talking nearly $2.5 million annual interest and principal payments, which is very significant. At the 7-year, it's only about 1.5. What's the difference there? The 7-year allows us to have those actual funds to fund other projects. Because remember, we're looking at cash flow here too. If we spend $2.5 million in those last 2 years of the 5-year loan, it'll significantly reduce our ability to fund new projects with the capital R&R rate revenue. Additionally, when we look at this, and especially on the sewer side, because you're going to have a sewer loan and a water loan, each paid separately from its own rates, when you get out into the last 2 years of the 5-year loan, we're actually collecting less revenues than what our debt service would be. So we'd have to set aside those revenues in the early years to help pay for the latter years, and it really restricts the amount of money we have for sewer projects. So between the fact that you have a very minimal difference between the all-inclusive costs on both the 5-year and the 7-year, plus the fact that the debt service requirements and the cash flow, we highly recommend going with a 7-year loan. Now, if we can go back to, we're on this one, okay. Now, can you jump ahead to the summary of proposals? There we go. Here is a summary of the 5 different banks that proposed or submitted proposals. We have Umpqua Bank, Municipal Finance Corporation, JP Morgan Chase, Capital One Public Financing, and BBVA. If you look at the top line, it's at AIC all-inclusive rates. You'll see that Umpqua came in at 2.46, and it goes up to BBVA 2.72. Total interest costs on the Umpqua for the 5-year is $435,000 over the 5-year period, and BBVA is a little higher at $486,000. And again, as I talked about the maximum and average annual debt service, you can see the significant costs associated with the 5-year loan at $2.5 million. When we go down to the 7-year, what's key here is if you look under the Umpqua Bank column, the rate, all-inclusive rate for a 5-year loan under Umpqua Bank is only 2.48%, 0.02% more than it would be for a 5-year loan. And that's what I'm focusing on, that nominal minimal difference that makes it attractive to go for the 7-year rate. Yes, interest will be a little bit more over the length of the term of the loan, but I think that when you're looking at cash flow, especially of the projects we want to do and the use of the money, it really makes sense to go for the 7-year loan. Now, Umpqua doesn't have a rate lock, but I talked to them on Monday, and they're very willing to keep it open for the time of negotiation, and we're planning on close the end of this month or first week of April, and they don't anticipate any changes in it. Some of them are indexed to the current rates, but the top 2 proposals, Muni and Umpqua, will lock it in for us to be able to go through these negotiations. There are some lender costs. Some of these are associated with their bond counsel that's going to have to review the documents. And Umpqua and Muni have prepayment options. So are there any questions on this particular summary before I go on to our recommendation? Yes, sir.
Can you give me an estimate of our capital R&R revenue?
It varies over the years because it scales in.
The first year.
The first year on the water, it's a little over 1.3 million. And on the sewer, it's about 460,000. But it'll ramp up over time. And both packages have a little bit lower principal and interest costs in that first year, so we'll be fine.
Okay, so by stretching it out, we're going to spend about $350,000 on additional interest?
Yes. If you go back to these 2 slides, you're looking at, actually it's 314,000.
Okay, so can you explain again, I heard what you said, but can you explain in a little bit more detail why it's, what we're going to gain by spending the extra money on the interest? That's what I think.
Yeah. One of the key points here is on the sewer side. If I look at the revenue and debt service projections, we do have surpluses in the first 3 years, but when we hit year 4, we have negative cash flow rates versus debt service of 168,000, and then on the year 5, it's 615,000. So we will have to set aside a significant portion of our revenues on the 5-year loan, and that will really inhibit the amount of money we have to produce projects, and we'll only have, out of the 5.5 million or 5.6 million of new revenues over the 4 years of this program, or 5 years of this program, we'll only have 1.3 of additional available for projects, net of the debt service.
So how do you see cash flow working in the latter years in terms of this money is a jump start, and I'm thinking when you say jump start that it'll probably be used in the first 2-3 years?
To help out, yes.
Okay, and so as far as cash flow in the following years, how is that going to affect what we can do at that point?
Well, in terms of the 7-year, once we get into years 3, 4, and 5, we'll be having about $1 million in each year for projects up above and beyond this original loan. That's netted out the debt service. So we'll be in much better shape to get projects completed. Obviously, we'll look for other funding sources and grants and such, but we're kind of limited in those areas, especially in the areas of down in Copperopolis, especially where we're going to have to do some significant work because it is not a DAC, and unfortunately, the grant availability in an area like that is limited.
So what you're saying is we give up the interest in order to gain the $1 million in cash flow?
That is correct, and the flexibility to do the projects we need to do.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bob and
Finished,
Dennis.
Don?
Yeah.
This particular period of rate increase runs from 2014 or 2013-14 year to 17-18, is that correct?
Yes.
And we'll be borrowing the money in the second year of that rate increase. So that basically means that our payments at 5 years will extend out past this period of rate increase. 1 year if we do a 5-year rate increase. In other words, we would pay off the loan in 2018-19. If we went out 7 years, we'd be paying off the loan in 1921, 1920, 19, 20, 21.
21.
And I'm also looking at, in this summary of financial proposals, the ability to prepay on the Umpqua loan, which I have to assume is the one you're going to recommend because it's the cheapest of the bunch. And I don't know why, with the prepayment option and the ability to keep this particular loan within, as close to the parameters of that rate increase that we put through, that we wouldn't stay with a 5-year instead of a 7-year.
The loan that we're going to be funding we're looking to close at the end of this month, no later than the 1st of
Right,
April.
right.
So it would be in the first year of the rate increase, because the rate increase just started this year. However, that being said, my biggest concern is cash flow. And if we go with the 5-year on the sewer, we have negative cash flow in the last 2 years. So it'll greatly inhibit the amount of work we have, and one of the biggest projects we have is the copper reclaim plant, which will probably come into construction at that time, which is at least a $2 million project.
But we're going to go out then towards the end of this particular loan, we'll be going out and asking to borrow money when we already have a debt. So that's going to work against us as well.
Asking for more money?
Well, if you want to borrow money to do,
No, we're looking to include that copper plant within this framework. But if we go with a 5-year loan, I don't think we can do it within the framework. If we do it within a 7-year loan, we can.
The debt service in the 5 loan is what amount, and the debt service in the 7-year is what amount? I mean, I think that, we're gonna pay a lot more money to pay off the 5-year loan annually than we are for the 7-year loan. And that'll give us the ability to finish some of these projects, which are, critical. And there's a price to pay for that. It's 2.5%.
Not my point I was going to make, but are you factoring in the idea that this rate increase is not going away at 5 years?
right.
It's going to still be there. We're still going to continue to fund these capital projects. I'm hoping that we don't have to raise more money for capital projects. We just keep this thing going.
Look at the resolution.
And so it's not, it almost sounds to me like you were saying that this money is going to go away at 5 years from this rate increase.
Not necessarily, but the debt won't go away. we'll still have the money from this rate increase, and we'll still be committed to capital improvements, unless the board decides another direction. But I'm just very much concerned that we get out of the debt business and get more into the capitalization business. That's my concern, and that revolves around the 2 years. And I see, it may not be a significant amount of money. I calculated it out. It costs each ratepayer about $2.50 a year to go out to the 7 year as opposed to the 5 year. But I kind of got married to this 5 year concept way back when, and so I'm, if nothing else, paying the devil's advocate. I know we need to borrow the money. That's a given. And the sooner we can borrow it, the sooner we can start working on these projects, and the sooner we'll probably get better economies of scale, because my guess is we should be getting better rates, or at least better bids on our projects earlier in the season rather than later in this particular rate season. So I'm really committed to getting this stuff done. I just don't know that I'm committed to extending the debt an additional 2 years.
Well, I support going to the 7-year schedule and negotiating with Umpqua. I think we have to remember, I had expected it by this time for the construction industry and prices associated with construction projects to be escalating. I haven't found that that's the case. We're still in the doldrums. We need to use as much money as possible, as soon as possible for these projects, because if we have to wait until we collect the cash, save the cash, I think conditions in 7 years are going to be much different, and prices are going to be much higher than they are right now. So I still think it's a hugely competitive bid process now for these projects. So we're going to get lower costs. So the sooner we can get projects started and completed, I think we'll end up saving much more than the interest if we have to wait for the project, save it, worry about some sort of spill or another thing that may actually put a fine on top of us. So I think I support what staff's recommendation is. If it is to go to 7 years, I think that's the responsible thing for us to do. In the end, we'll save money on these projects, even though there's a cost of doing business, which is the interest over this the 6th and 7th year. I think in the end it will be a responsible decision.
If I can respond to that a little bit, we're still borrowing $6.3 million, whether we pay off in 5 or 7 years. So we'll have the opportunity to do those projects regardless.
We'll have less cash in the 6th and 7th year to do projects.
Yeah, but there's also the prepayment aspect, which I think should be considered. We also have the prepayment for the 7 year too. So,
Yes.
so I mean, what's important is we get this money in place so we can start doing the projects. I'm just playing the devil's advocate here with the 5 year. I'm looking at $200,000+ in additional interest over that period of time, which is money.
And that's still an option
Yes, it is.
at any time.
Yeah,
The 1 year loan if we decide.
And we're looking for flexibility here. And both the 5 and the 7 with Umpqua, and even if we go down to the next most competitive bid, Muni, they have a prepayment option as well. So I'm looking at flexibility, because we have to be able to adjust to the things that are happening. As Director Davidson said, if we have a sewer spill and we need to create or have a problem with the sewer system, and we need money to fix it right away, I'm concerned especially in years 4 and 5 on the sewer side, that the 5-year loan may not give us that flexibility. But I appreciate your concern on the interest costs, and that's why I like the flexibility of the prepayment option on the 7-year loan and the low rates.
Jeff, the one concern I have is the presentation, and we're all talking about 5-year, 7-year, Umpqua or someone else, but the resolution is written in such a way that it doesn't tie us to any of these things. We're going to vote here today.
I have that same concern.
We're going to vote here today, and we're not voting on 5 or 7. We're not voting on Umpqua or somebody else. The way the resolution is written, it doesn't have any of those facts in it at all, and is not tied to the presentation. And so I'm just curious, is this, and this, what it does, this slide just comes up, and what we're voting on is to allow the general manager to negotiate the final terms, and I'm just wondering, is there a different way of doing this? Can we tie the resolution to our discussion and the presentation and vote on the 7-year and vote on Umpqua. And the other concern that I had is we're thinking that Umpqua might lock in this rate for, or has made a verbal that they will hang on to it for a period of time. What assurances do we have of that?
Those are all questions, very good questions. And one of the things, and I'm going to defer to Cameron Wiest, he's here today and can talk about the legal portion and the writing of the resolution and how it's written. But the goal here is to go for the most competitive bid, and that is Umpqua, and I believe that's what the resolution states. But we also want to give, if for some reason the bid process or the negotiation process with Umpqua breaks down and they can't commit to what they've proposed to us, the general manager has a flexibility to go to the next most competitive bid. And I'd like to bring Cameron up because of the writing of that. Maybe he can explain it a little bit better than I did. And he can also possibly address this 5-year and 7-year.
One other question I have, because it was brought up, I believe, in the last board meeting, or in the last couple of board meetings, there was some conversation regarding USDA and an ability to perhaps leverage some grant money out of them for these. Is that?
There are several alignments for potential grants with the program in our R&R, yes. So we may get...
They wouldn't be tied to this particular loan scenario, though?
Not specifically. Ultimately, as you recall, we didn't go for full funding of all the rates in order to meet the capital program. There was a gap, and so we are dependent upon finding some grant money to fill a couple $1 million in the 5 years with grants. And that's already planned into the program, is to go find those grants. So we do have talks with USDA going on, DWR, and anyone else that we can potentially find some grant money from.
I also thought that there was some talk about borrowing from USDA and then paying it off with some of the loans.
Yes, that's not worked out in any detail, but part of the way the USDA program works, it's a grant loan, they're married. So in order to maximize your grant award, they'd like to see a loan that's part and parcel to that. And then ultimately, they don't have a prepayment, so it may be a situation where we have achieved a better rate here, so instead of having USDA debt, we're using a lower cost money, but we go through the process to secure the debt in order to secure the grant money.
Their debt's usually 30 years too, right?
It can be 40 years.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately, we would see that as a less favorable way to go.
I agree.
But if there's significant enough money on the table to make the grant worthwhile, we want to be able to exploit that.
Go ahead, Jim.
When do you anticipate doing this?
We're hoping to close by the end of the month.
Okay.
Real quick, before Cameron comes up here, is there a specification on how much is going to be spent on water and wastewater on this, or is this just thrown into a pot for both?
They are individual loans supported by the individual rates. The water loan will be $4 million and cost of issuance, and the sewer will be $2.3 million plus cost of issuance.
Okay, somehow I missed that, so.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yes, good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. So the question, I believe, on the floor is that you'd like to know whether it's appropriate to give more direction to the idea of the 5 or the 7. And I think the answer to that is yes. I think that's what you're discussing, and staff is taking notice. If you make just a verbal motion of that and make that notification, I think staff is going to follow through with those directives. The reason, of course, why it's not in the resolution is because we had to have this discussion and leave it open-ended for that, to give direction to this. And from the standpoint of the actual bid proposers, there are a couple of factors that still must be negotiated. And by adopting the resolution, you're giving your staff, the general manager, the green light to negotiate those few last components, and most notably that the Umpqua bid does not have a cap on its council rates, and so that's one of the items that would affect the all-inclusive cost. And of course, I think it's in staff's mind that they want to go and make sure that that is capped or understood as to what the ultimate costs are going to be from that loan. That's a material factor. You're giving your general manager that authority to go get that done, make sure that it's still the most competitive bid based on that open-endedness of that element. Also, you have the idea of most of these bids are tied to an index, or they have a number of days that we have to get these loans closed, and the Umpqua bid just doesn't have that. So there's two elements there that we view as weak. So we want to make sure those are shored up before you actually name by resolution one of those proposers. And so I think with this resolution, you have that flexibility. You're giving your staff those directives, and they're going to do what's best for the district based on discussions this morning. So that was the main question that I heard at this point.
Okay, do we have the flexibility of asking or writing or including in here 5 versus 7?
In your motion, but not in your resolution.
Right, exactly, in the motion, but the resolution, I think, is going to, unless you'd like to actually amend the resolution on the spot and actually make it part of the resolution, which you could do as well, but
But we can also just give staff direction.
of course.
And maybe that's something you want to do, Scott. You want to tackle, the 5-year, 7-year, and get, some direction from staff, and then, or to give direction to staff from the board, and then perhaps ask for a motion on the resolution.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was just going to ask, and I think Jeff mentioned the fact that the negotiation is going to be completed by the end of the month. Is that, where is Jeff? Oh, yeah. Is that what?
Yes, that is our intent to have
So
negotiations.
that's the time that we're looking at, 2 weeks at
Yes,
the outside.
depends on how fast these legal beagles can work.
Okay. If he works by the hour, we're in trouble.
No, that is the goal, and that's what was proposed to the banks as well, so they know we want to close by the end of the month.
Okay, so the one factor that would revolve around our relationship with both Umpqua, but I guess just about everybody else, is the timing on this thing. If we drag it out, it could cost us more money.
That is correct. It's a goal to get it done quickly before anything happens in the markets.
I just think we borrow a lot of money over the years, and besides the 1.58, have we ever borrowed money at this low of an interest rate?
Not that I'm familiar
So
with.
this is the second lowest interest rate in history.
It is
It's
quite
just
low.
an incredible time.
Yeah. And can I build upon that? You made a very, very valid point. Interest rates are low. We don't know how long they're going to stay at this level, especially because the feds keep seeing better economic data, and they could back off on their quantitative easing. And the Fed Chairwoman Yellen seems to be moving in that direction. The other thing I want to go back to is Southwest Securities and Todd Smith in general has been very, very successful in getting great rates for us. And Cameron can probably attest to that because he does a number of these deals. And I think we had some banks here really sharpen their pencils for us to get this thing done.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is very true. We've seen in the last 2 years the pickup in the private placement market by at least 50% over a public offered method. And the reason for that is these banks have caught on to the fact that their inventory of municipal debt can grow, and it's effective versus the treasury market, because the treasuries have been held so low, in their view, artificially, so they're looking for yield, of course, for their investors. And they've finally been educated through a number of years on the fact that municipal bonds, if you do your due diligence, are a very safe investment for these banks. And so there's more and more banks that are coming online. What I can also tell you, though, is, and yours is a perfect case in point, you had BBVA last year bid the 1.58%. This year, BBVA was the highest bidder on your list. So what happens is internally, they have different mandates. Their portfolio managers are always shuffling. What do we want for municipal paper this year, this month, this quarter? And so it's always in flux. And that's why this process that you've undertaken is very valuable, because you would not know. You may go back to BBVA and of course not know, thinking they were the lowest bidder last year, and that's not the case this year, so.
And I'd just like to reinforce that this quarter is the important takeaway from the bank's portfolio.
And Director Davidson, you did ask if I wanted to frame some issues and put it. I don't really. I don't think it's necessary with the time frame that we have. I'm comfortable with the resolution the way it's written, and it is going to be taking place in the next couple of weeks. I think timing is important, and so providing our general manager with the discretion and the opportunity to make these decisions. I'm fine with the way the resolution's written. Go ahead, Bob, and then.
Yeah, just real quick. Although I favor a 5-year loan just to get us out of debt, I think your argument about the flexibility of having additional cash in hand for potential emergencies is a strong one. I'd hate to have to go out and borrow that money and be at the mercy of a lender. I'm perfectly happy to support the 7-year, but I would like us, as we move forward in this process, if there's any opportunity to pay down that debt as a prepayment, I would highly recommend it. That's all I have.
I can support the 7-year for the cash flow concept and the low interest rate. Although at our next board meeting, after this has been completed, I'd like a detailed report of exactly what took place.
Of the actual closing?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ready for a motion?
Yes. Well, let's, this discussion is still ongoing. Any public comment on this item? If you please come up to the microphone for your public comment. Looks like we got 2. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Let me just take a quick question for Jeff. The Dale Pilgrim, Arnold. What's the prepayment clause on this thing? Is it always free, or is it after 3 years, after 5 years? What are the limitations on the prepayment option?
Okay. I can address that if the board was so like.
Yeah, please.
On the Umpqua loan, on the 7-year, which we're looking at, the prepayment premium equal to the amount prepaid is 3% in year 1, 3% in year 2, 2% in year 3, 2% in year 4, and 1% in years 5, 6, and 7.
So this costs you something.
Yeah.
What that your question?
The
What about the other ones, any of the other loans are even, but still be more than that, like after 3 years, it's 0%.
The others are right around that same thing. And that's typical of a short-term loan, because if they're investing this money, they want to get something in return.
Yeah, just real quick. Following up on what Director Dean was mentioning, and personally I'm more comfortable with a 5-year, if you're going to do it, and get rid of the loans and see where you are at that point and proceed from there. However, we do know for sure that any monies received on this loan, number one, will only be used for R&R and aren't going to sneak into OEM in some form. And number 2, and I lost my train of thought, pardon me. The negative cash flow you were mentioning in the last final years, I assume that even if you did go to the 7-year, that there's plenty of income currently to make sure that there is money on hand to pay the loan out without in having to come back to the ratepayers for increased rates.
Can you take the 2-part question?
Certainly. In looking In regards to the first question regarding the purpose of these funds, the purpose of these loans, along with the capital R&R rates, repair and renovation, they can only be used for capital repair and renovation projects. Same applies to this loan. And so the rates can either pay for the projects themselves or the debt service of these loans. They cannot go over and be commingled with the O&M money and support day-to-day operations. That was the direction your board gave us back in July of last year, and it has been the direction we followed ever since. In regards to the negative cash flow, the negative cash flow will only occur in the sewer side in the 5-year loan package. And when we're looking at the 5-year, I'm sorry, the 7-year loan on the sewer side, there is no negative cash flow. So there'll always be projects or always be money for additional projects. And when I say negative cash flow, that's obviously after the debt service has been paid. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at the 7-year loan, because it gives us those options to do more projects and gives us that flexibility.
Perfect. Okay, going to close public comment on this, item. Looking for any action by the board?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2014. 2014, authorizing financing of certain water and wastewater capital improvements, improvement forms, and authorization and directing execution and delivery of a water installment sale agreement and a wastewater installment sale agreement.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, board.
Okay, move on to new business. Item 5A, discussion action regarding employee recognition program. Stacy Lawler, HR Manager.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before you today, I have a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Calaveras County Water District recognizing and honoring CCWD employee Lynn Gentry. I'd like to take this moment and read the resolution. Whereas Lynn Gentry has diligently served the Calaveras County Water District from May 16th, 2004 to March 14th, 2014. And whereas during her tenure, Lynn was promoted to Auditor Controller, Director of Support Services, and took on the temporary assignment of Interim General Manager from June to December 2012. And whereas Lynn has worked with a strong sense of dedication and responsibility to her position, staff, and the customers of the district. And whereas Lynn has overseen and participated in efforts that led to improved fiscal management and assured fiscal integrity for the district. And whereas Lynn has strived to impress transparency and responded to numerous public information requests to promote clarity into the district's financial matters. Congratulations.
We are here to recognize Lynn, and congratulations, Lynn. We would like to move, looking for a motion.
I'll move for acceptance. Wait, if we vote no, will you stay?
If there's no motion and a second and this thing doesn't pass, you got to stay. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none.
No customers, right?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Let's, we're going to take a short break.
Short informal break.
Very short, 2 or 3 minute break.
To make this presentation, so, would you like coffee?
That's good.
I suppose.
Congratulations, Lynn.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Maybe up here.
One and only.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. To stay there. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Into session as soon as we find Mona. Oh, there she is.
Are we back in session?
Yeah, we're back in session.
Well, I want to make one comment about Lynn publicly. I've always said that there's nobody at the district, particularly board members, that we can't do without, but I'm not sure about Lynn. I'm sure you've left capable people behind you, or you wouldn't have left. But I just sincerely, from the board, I want to thank you for all the great work and just steady leadership, and you're a fantastic example of Calvert County Water District employees. Thank you.
Here, 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 here.
Yes.
So
Good
Jeff's
job.
not up for reelection this year. What do you really think?
Okay, moving on, we're in item 5, new business, 5B. Discussion action regarding toilet rebate program. Jeffrey Meyer, Director of Administrative Services. Is Jeff
Nice to know where
stepped?
you land, right?
But Jeff's the fellow without the clock, I guess. So ultimately, what we're here to do today is talk a little bit about a proposal to initiate a toilet rebate program. It's something that we had not previously had in our portfolio previously. There's two things to build upon here. One is the fact that we do have a drought, and a reminder that the drought is real. Additionally, we also have the state law which changed this year, which says, hey, if you're going to take a building permit, you've got to improve all the fixtures in your house to water safety standards anyway. So recognizing that, we thought we would take a look to see what we could do. The toilets account for more than a quarter of all indoor water use. It seemed like there are places to start. With outdoor water using a little over half, your downhill of the water demand. For indoor demand, toilets are a great place to have a return on investment in the rebate program. Toilets manufactured early that use 3.5 to 7 gallons per flush. Certainly there's a black market for those that are 5 to 7 gallons right now. I have one available. Ultimately, very about it. So ultimately, there's potential to save about 17,000 gallons per toilet per year. Replacing older toilets with a high efficiency toilet of 1.28 gallons per flush can save up to 17,000 gallons. So we're trying to encourage those to be done. We outlined some provisions of the program. You must be a CCWD customer. We didn't discriminate between a water or sewer customers. If you're a CCWD customer, you're eligible to cover $25 each for replacement up to 2 older toilets. Residential and commercial applicants are eligible. The program would go from 1 April to 30 June. Frankly, we're reviewing it more as a pilot, see what happens, see if it's popular, see how it happens. Rebates can be on a first-come, first-served basis. And it would end if all of our conservation funds were exhausted. But frankly, because we didn't really do some things in the water resources program this year, because we hired the water resources program manager as early as anticipated, we have some supply money available there. So
What is the budget?
we have up to about $12,000.
Because I didn't see that in the program report, what the actual budget there's a kind of ambiguous stop, we can stop it anytime we want.
So at any rate, with that, we have a recommendation for you that we initiate the toilet rebate program for CCWD.
Go ahead, Bob.
Mitch, when do we do the Home and Garden Show?
Home and Garden Show is the end of this month on our
I think the 28th and 29th.
Do we want to kick off that rebate program for that Home and Garden Show?
Yes, it would be simply part of our,
So 29th and 30th.
That's what I recommend that we do it. I would start with this.
Go ahead, Dennis.
These toilets used to have a reputation of having to be flushed twice.
Or more.
And so you lose some of the purpose of the low-flow toilets. Have they pretty well perfected those so that they don't have that problem anymore?
The low flows that were older typically did have that problem, they had that reputation. I can tell you that going into toilet science is a PhD. The more expensive toilets do work better. The less expensive toilets are going to work less well. And so as you're dealing with the real super low flows that have the vacuum assist and every other mechanism into them, I guarantee you they will work better than any other toilet that's out there. But when you're dealing with a $100 replacement toilet that's kind of the builder grade special, you may still have those kinds of problems.
What do we give them if they go to a zero flow? Now that's.
Give them an airway.
Well, actually, digesting toilets are kind of an interesting thing, but like I said, there's a PhD program out there for somebody else.
Well, maybe we should have a study session.
If it's low
You want to
flow,
lead
if
it?
it's zero flow, are you going
It's an outhouse.
to donate money for neighbors to move away?
We got rid of the cabin.
Well, I like the program.
You gave me your watch for retirement, I know.
I'm sorry, I'm going to close things up with
Well, the item has been presented. At,
Oh, good.
Yeah, so.
Any questions? I'll do a Steve Hutchings.
I do. I have the same concern that Director Davidson did is on the ambiguous ending of it, your ability to stop the program at a unspecific time. Can we?
Director, I meant the timeframe to stop the program is June 30th, 2015.
Can we remove the last bullet point then, if that is the end, the way it's going to be? Then there's no reason to have.
$12,000 before the 30th of June.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see that happening at $25 a pop. And it just seems to have that end when water conservation funds are exhausted or CCWD ends the program. If we're going to start a program, let's finish it, and like we say we're going to do, and I don't see a need for that last bullet point. Is there?
The only concern I would have is if we did exhaust all funds and before June 30th, 2015.
Over $12,000 at $25 a pop?
Up to 2 per customer, that's
a lot.
I can't guarantee it, but I just, from a fiscal viewpoint, if for some reason we exhaust those funds, I'd like to have the ability to end the program based on the exhaustion, but so you can take out the or.
Okay. Is that, I'm very happy with that.
Okay.
Move for acceptance.
Second.
Did you want to include that this thing's going to kick off at the
I would like to have a kickoff.
Home Garden? We do have a public comment. We do have a couple public comments on this. Go ahead, Bob, I'm sorry.
We don't have any restrictions on where these toilets to be purchased?
No.
Is there any reason to give incentives to toilets being purchased within Calaveras County?
It's a bit challenging, I would think, but there certainly would be no, by Calaveras standard.
Where?
Cinders?
Cinders and Milk
Place.
Angels Camp?
No, we can't.
Arnold?
Let's not complicate it, guys. This is going to be hard enough for people to accomplish anyway.
Make it easy for them, because especially if you have a plumber who installs the toilets, he may have a relationship with the vendor.
Typically, they'll be ordering them from Ferguson
Or may already have them in stock. It would be a further
I only
problem.
bring it up because when we built this building, it was critical that we bring as many local vendors into the process as possible. I mean, maybe this is kind of late to ask for a revision, but could we give additional money for toilets purchased within county?
That you cannot do.
Okay.
I like the spirit of your thought.
I do too, that's why I brought it up.
Right.
And,
This is only for replacements, not for a new addition, which you're going to have to go low flow anyway, but
I think Mitch reported that if you need to get a permit to do this, which would be a new addition on a property or significant repairs or a new building, that you do have to, that these are going to be required anyway.
okay, but they're not going to be eligible for the rebate.
If it's a replacement toilet,
Correct.
yeah,
It's just replacing the older style. So-
yeah, there got to be a pre-92 there and then replace. And we do have a couple of public comments or questions.
I'm Catherine Evett from Foothill Conservancy, and I wanted to commend you for, starting down this path. It's good. It's a good program. We were going to say something about local purchase, but y'all have talked about that. The other addition that we would recommend for the program is that you make the rebates available only for toilets that are replaced by the customer or by a local handyman or contractor, so that you do keep some of the money in the county. And so that's one way you can kind of get the economic boost, make sure that, people aren't hiring a contractor from Stockton to come put in their replacement toilet. It's just, keep your money local. Comment I would just make personally is that I have a reasonably inexpensive ultra-low flush toilet. It's a dual flush toilet. It works really, really well. The new toilets are a completely different breed than the old ones, and so I think it's a good bet to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, or come on up.
It's good exercise. It's good exercise. Don't worry.
Good exercise, I know. Didn't have to go.
Yeah, with the filming of our meetings, there's no audio over there, so it would be a blank spot
Yeah,
in the program.
how is this paid back? Is this through a rate reduction, or are you actually issuing checks? First question. The second question is, do you require proof of this thing? And if so, how are you monitoring it, and how much does it cost? And is it all in your honor, or which would be the cheapest, or is it something else?
There is going to be an application process for the individuals to fill out, and they have to show proof of purchase. We don't require them to bring in the old toilets, but there is the proof of purchase, so they can make copies of their invoices. And the $25 and/or $50 will be credited to their account.
You guys control how long this out.
No, we will not be issuing checks. We issue a credit to the account. And then one of the advantages to that, we then have an electronic record of it in our Springbrook accounting system, actually the utility billing system.
Okay, and that closes public comment. We do have a motion from Director Davidson on the floor.
Second.
We got a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Item 5C, discussion action regarding contract renewal with Carmen Group Legislative Advocates in Washington, D.C. General Manager Mitchell Dion.
This is moving forward with another year agreement with the Carmen Group. They've represented us for a number of years. I think that the last 12 months, we've seen some other highlights within the report that's attached. Ultimately, the relationships which the Carmen Group has in Washington, particularly with Senator Feinstein's office, has proven beneficial. It was instrumental in putting the Water Force Summit together and ensuring that some of the foothills watershed issues have been addressed within Washington, D.C. More importantly, we've gained a significant amount of credibility just through the continuity of going and meeting with people, and having that continuity in place is very much part of what the Carmen Group has done for us. So with that, I can answer any questions.
I'll move for acceptance.
Second.
Any further discussion on the board? Go ahead.
I just, I'm opposed to this, as I have been every year. Since I've been on the board, since we've started with Carmen Group, we've spent probably $65,000 a year, plus expenses. And if that's roughly $200,000, could that money have gone to projects we needed a lot more? And I just have not seen any positive outcome of them. They just, everything's all talk, and it's almost like keep paying us money, keep talking, and we'll just keep doing more of it next year.
Mitch, you had a recent trip to Washington DC. How did they fit into any facilitation as a local lobbying group, or go ahead and talk about just a minute about the benefits?
Well, ultimately, I was going to go back specifically to some specific benefits that have happened in the last year. I mean, we have received money from FEMA of a significant amount. The Water Forest Forum was driven by the legislative activity that happened because we had the senator's support to have that happen. So within the last year, certainly I can provide a validation that we do get a direct return, both in dollars and also in access. One of the groups I met with when I was in D.C. was who is now the acting commissioner of the Bureau. For Calaveras County Water to meet with the commissioner of the Bureau is a...
We meet them all the time.
But not the commissioner.
It's been different people, but yeah.
The commissioner. Additionally, we've met with the senior folks within the U.S. Forestry Department, and so ultimately getting those people's attention when you're in as a visitor is an important thing to make sure that we have created the relationship and rapport that goes on for multiple years. The projects that we're talking about, like dealing with the headwaters issues and dealing with some of our forest management practices, those aren't going to go away, and they're going to take many years to develop and many years worth of support that has to have a Washington spin. I will also go back and say, what does Washington do other than talk?
Also, I mean, it's this FEMA, the Big Trees grant, the hazard mitigation. That's a direct result of our lobbying efforts and through the Carmen Group. I think it's $870,000. You can't say that didn't happen. It's happening. We're gonna replace those redwood tanks. It's a very important thing in the Emmons Pass area, and I mean that's a direct result.
Okay, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. I think we got a motion on the floor.
In a second.
And a second. Okay, with a motion and a second, we'll go ahead and vote on the item. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed?
No.
4 to 1, Mr. Dooley is opposed. Okay, moving on, item 5D, discussion action regarding Mokelumne River Wild and Scenic Designation. Director Davidson, are you pitching this item?
Well, I'm not really pitching anything, but I just noticed that it was an agenda item at the Board of Supervisors, and I read a couple articles about it. I was sorry that we weren't, I'm sure, I mean, we get copies of agendas. I wish we'd had representation at that meeting, and I'm curious as to what our position would be on this, being, water suppliers, water purveyors. I just want to know more about it. I have concerns, and so I was just looking for an update, and then as to whether or not our board would want to support this or not. So that's the reason I wanted to bring it to the, I mean, we do have water reservation, 19,000 acre foot reservation on McCollum that one day I hope to put into use, particularly for the east to western end of the county. We definitely don't want to just throw that by the water right away, and I don't know how this affects it. So with that, I'd like some more information.
Mr. Stump?
This is, in my view, has gotten pretty emotional. I know I've gotten several calls. There's a lot of people on both sides of the issue that have asked me to support their position. This is, as Director Davidson said, I think it's our responsibility to look at this through the water prism. I mean, I raft rivers. I really enjoy it. It's a fun thing to do, but I have to act for the citizens of Calaveras County. As Director Davidson said, we've got 20,000 acre feet on the McCollum. We can't use that. That's enough water to provide for whatever potential growth is happening in the West County. That is available to us as far as transfers are concerned to the tune of, $8-9 million a year. Of course, we can't do anything with that. Conservatively, at $400 an acre foot, that's a huge amount of money that could be coming in here, and that would be supporting rates dramatically. Since we have subsidized rates, that would be huge for our ratepayers. But we can't do anything with that because we have zero storage and we have zero diversion. We need those dramatically. Some of the supervisors have said, we've been singing this song forever and ever, and I don't dispute that. We're singing the song because we don't have the revenue in order to create the storage necessary. There's potentially about 20 or 30 small storage, surface storage projects in Calaveras County. Of those 20 or 30, I think probably only about 2 or 3 may be viable. I don't really know, but as you guys are aware of, we're in a crisis right now. This is a dramatic drought, and the state has stepped up and the feds have stepped up. In January, I was approached by DWR, California Department of Water Resources, wanting to know if we had any shovel-ready projects in the Sierra that they could latch onto. Of course, we don't. I mean, there's nobody that has shovel-ready projects. In about 4 weeks ago, we met with the chair of the Delta Stewardship Council. He just wrote a paper. He's assuming that there's 5 million acre feet available for storage in the Sierra. I don't know where he gets that number, but he seems to think that there's that amount. And he's anxious to develop that storage. He's gone to the Water Commission. Water Commission has gone to Aqua. Aqua is sending out a questionnaire to all of the water agencies hunting for storage. I understand the governor's office has talked to the legislators that are writing water bonds. There's about 9 or 10 water bonds being written right now, and one just got bumped up additional $1 billion for storage. I have no idea if a water bond is even going to pass, but the reality is everyone seems to think this is really, really critical. And then yesterday, we had the Bureau of Reclamation, stand up and say, we want you to provide us with high elevation storage. We are looking for high elevation storage potential projects. Now, I don't know if any of those will fit in Calaveras County, but 20,000 acre feet is not huge. It's not a big chunk of storage. But if we could get that on the McCollum, it would change how water is seen in Calaveras County. Because right now, it's all been just talk. And it's talk because we don't have the money to develop it. And we may not even have the projects to develop. But the reality is, it's our job to take care of the residents of Calaveras County. Now, I understand all of the issues that people are bringing to me. But I think it would be premature for us to be signing on to Wild and Scenic, because I don't have anything in front of me that says that after Wild and Scenic is adopted, that somehow it would restrict or keep us from developing a 20,000 acre chunk of storage. This, if I can have that document that says, if you sign on with us for wild and scenic, we will guarantee that we will not have any problem with storage, then I'm right there. I'll sign it in a
It
heartbeat.
doesn't say that. It says the opposite.
Well, I don't know, I'm not an attorney. This stuff gets real complex real fast for me. But I need something clear and concise before I can move in that direction. So at this point, it's not on the agenda to adopt or not. I think it's important as a water district that we look at the future of Calaveras County and see what is our responsibilities in terms of subsidizing our rates or providing future water for West County. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Dennis, then Bob?
I'd like to echo pretty much what Don just said. And I've always had a trouble understanding designation of wild and scenic when there's already quite a bit developed structures on the river. And what it seems to me is that what it does is making a river that has already quite a bit of development on it as a wild and scenic, it now prohibits any future development on that river. And I don't know what the developments are, but it basically, I think, my understanding is it takes it off the table. You can't deliver that. You already have